Hello and welcome to session 2 of Unpacking with Sarah. I'm your host, Sarah Westbrook, and I am very excited to be here with you today in our brand new recording studio. We've got a new place with the farm right behind us. I'm really excited about that. So grab your coffee. I've got my English morning breakfast tea going on here, and we are going to talk about demystifying the neuroscience of your mental wellness. And I think that this is really important. These are what I call my foundational sessions that all of my clients get. And I'm going to be breaking these down into easy to digest mini episodes for y'all because I want you to be able to listen to them in about 15-minute increments. You can listen to them on your commute to work. You can come back and review them over and over and over again without having to sift through, an hour or a 90-minute episode, which is my normal forum on some of the other shows that I'm doing. You can also, as we get these recorded, come back and do a deep dive. We're hoping to keep the labels of these very clear so it's easy for you to find episodes and tag them. Um, our goal again here at Unpacking with Sarah with these sessions is to kind of bridge that gap between the theory and all of this academic information that you get from, my podcast or other podcasts and really make it user friendly so that you can and apply it to your daily lives. So if you have any questions, comments, or anything, you are welcome to check out our website at daisygirlcommunications.com, or email me directly at daisygirlcommunications@gmail.com. We really want to have an interactive audience, and then we will occasionally have a Q&A section here at Unpacking with Sarah where we can really dig into some of the questions that our audience is asking us. So with that, let's jump in. When we talk about the neuroscience of our brain, with regards to mental wellness, what we're referring to is what is going on from a neurobiological or neurochemical space that influences the way that we think, respond, react, what's going on inside our body. And so today we're really going to focus on our brain. And then in our next session, so session 3, we're going to really get into how it influences our body. So that way you can have kind of that understanding. So we're going to be heavy on the education today, less on the application for today. But these are very important things to understand about our brain. I'm hoping that I can do this in easy to understand language so that way you don't feel like you need to have a master's or a doctorate degree to understand it. Also, I want you to let you know that I talk about these things with my children. And I think that that's very important. So if you've got kiddos or you work with kiddos, this is accurate for any human with a, neurotypical brain and most humans with a neuroatypical brain because these things are biological functions. It's kind of like saying, hey, our bodies need food. This is how we say, hey, our bodies react or our brains react in this way under certain stimuli or things that get us triggered. So let's jump right in. So first off, I want to talk about a video that I use a lot in clinic. It's a YouTube video. I wish that I had created this. It would be awesome if I had. This says like 1.1 million views. I'm going to say that I'm at least 100,000 of those views. That is an exaggeration to make my point. I show this video to every single client that comes through my door because it's 3 minutes, information packed, accurate. The only thing that they're missing is the fawn response. So if I was to change this, it would be the fight, flight, freeze fawn response. And we're going to really dig into what the fight, flight, freeze fawn response is next week in session 2A. So if you are watching live, then when we're done, please, the link to this YouTube video is in the description in the description of the podcast or the YouTube channel. And then we're also going to make sure that you can find it. But if you're having a really hard time finding it, this is the title of this video is The Fight, Flight, Freeze Response It is produced by Braive, Braive, and this is a company out of Australia that has done just a whole bunch of these videos. I love this. It's very educational. It is everything we're talking about over the next 15 minutes and next week, but crammed into a 3-minute visual. I've shown this to my kids. It is definitely kid and family appropriate. So please take a moment, pause this, go watch this video, and then come back with us, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to give you about 5 seconds of silence, just in case you did that. So, okay, so moving right along, we're going to talk a little bit about the layers of our brain. So, Alex, if you can pull up that amygdala function photo that I sent you. So this is kind of how this works. We talk about our brains having layers, and I normally talk about the 2 layers of the brain, which is your reptilian brain, or like I'm going to call it your survival brain, the part of your brain that is like, oh my God, I see this fearful thing. It scares me. It terrifies me. It makes me mad. It makes me sad. And I need to protect myself from it, because if I don't, I'm going to die. And yes, our brain is that dramatic. And so what you see here in this image is the amygdala function, or amygdala function. I like to use an extra L there. You're going to hear me do that. That's not a normal thing. I'm trying to coin my own term here, or make up my own words. For those of you that know me, I make up my own words quite a bit. But what this is demonstrating is you see something that causes a survival instinct. My brain interprets it as, I'm going to die if I don't have a reaction. And on this picture, we're looking at, I see something. Please note that you can hear something, taste something, smell something, and you're going to have a similar neuro pathway, or the way it responds in our body. So in this case, before our rational brain, so right here behind my forehead is my frontal cortex, or my prefrontal cortex, or my prefrontal cortex. That's the rational, wise mind. It's the part of our brain that we always want to live in. And we have an unrealistic expectation that that is the part of our brain that we should always function in. Unfortunately, we cannot do that. That amygdala and our limbic system is just going to hijack our responses sometimes. And so we need to be aware of that. So in this case, I see the spider. My brain interprets that this spider is about to kill me. And therefore, it goes through the thalamus, or the visual thalamus, processes that information. We've got our visual cortex right here at the back of our head, and that gets into our amygdala faster than our frontal cortex can keep up. And we have a physiological response to this. And those physiological responses mean rapid changes in how fast our heart is beating, our blood pressure, our brain like shuts down the thinking part of our brain, and it has changes in our body. Like we might start shaking, we might start screaming, we might run away, we might hide. We might get tunnel vision, and all we can focus on is survival. And so that is a normal function of what is known as our survival brain. And that amygdala is right down there in that survival section of our brain. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. If we look at our synapse process, so Alex, if you can pull up that synapse. So synapse and the other portions of our brain, we've got axons, we've got neurons, we've got all of these things. They are electrical impulses in our brain that help us communicate. So if you were to look back at that amygdala function picture, the way that that communication happens in our brain is through electricity. And our brain generates this electricity, and it's these electrical impulses that change the chemistry in our brain, that control a lot of the way our brain will think, respond, remove, react. We don't always have control of this. These things are happening faster than our rational, logical brain can respond. And so I like to talk about this response as, I'm trying to stay in my solid thinking brain, but I've got this constant tug of war going on between my rational brain and my survival brain. And that limbic system is kind of caught in between. So think of this as like I'm going to say what is it? The Ferrero Rocher hazelnut things. You've got your nut in the middle. That nut is your survival brain. Then you've got that, candy, chocolate nougat piece, not nougat, that it's a, truffle. There we go, that chocolate truffle. And then on the outside, you've got kind of that harder shell with the crisps. And now all I want is the candies. They're delicious. That's kind of how our brain is. That center nut is our survival response. And everything on the outside of it is the brain system that is supposed to keep us safe. So, Alex, if you can pull up our sensory brain photo, this is kind of what our brain looks like. So as you can see from this picture, we've got certain parts of our brain that control our sensation of our fingers. So like our touch. So when we talk about our five senses, I like to say we have six senses. We've got the touch, we've got our sight, we've got our olfactory or our smell. We've got our auditory cortex, or the part of our brain that processes and interprets what we hear. All of these sensory things are part of that limbic system. Like, I cannot control what I hear. If there is a sound and there's sound waves and those hit our ears, I'm going to hear it. And then I have this part of my brain that is the perception. The perception part is how my brain interprets this. And this comes into when we say my auditory cortex, it's how my brain is interpreting the sound, or when I see things, what is my brain interpreting? These cortexes are separate from my frontal cortex, which is what I do or how I respond, or not respond, but how I think about and um cognate, I guess, about all of this information that is coming in. So when I look at my stress response piece here, so Alex, go ahead and pull up that stress response. I really want to talk about how our is going to text that a life-threatening threat is coming, and it's going to start the stress response. Our hypothalamus is the part of our brain, it's like our operation. I like to say it's the office manager of our brain. It's the part that sends out the chemical changes. So it's like, hey, we need a chemical change in order for your adrenaline and your cortisol, which is your energy and your stress hormones. We're going to get those to release, and we're going to make those travel to different areas of your body so that you can run harder, fight faster, be more hyper aware. It stresses you out. Your hippocampus is Grand Central Station. It's saying, hey, I need more cortisol to travel to the thighs and the calves and the feet so you can run. Or I need more energy to go to your biceps and your fists so you can punch and fight. Okay, so the hippocampus is Grand Central Station. It's pointing the directions of everything, where everything's supposed to go. And then your prefrontal cortex, it says here, is your brain CEO. It analyzes all of this information and it designs a response. However, when your amygdala responds with a great deal of intensity, oftentimes, oh, let me turn that off. I'm sorry. I've got things all over the place that are turning on, and I'm still getting used to this new system that I've got here. I apologize for that interruption. Sometimes when our amygdala responds so quickly, it leaves the CEO out, meaning that I'm having responses that I don't have as much control over as society would like to claim that I do. And we're going to really dig into that next Thursday, and what we can do about that and how that system works. And over the course of the next 12 to 24 weeks, I'm really hoping that you, my audience, can say, hey, this is what's going on. My response is normal. And I really want to dig that in. Whatever response you're having, whether it's serving you well or not, we call it maladaptive, means it's not serving you very well, or it's a response that makes you really uncomfortable and you don't want to have that response anymore, versus an adaptive response, meaning I've got some control over this and I have the ability to change the way that my body and brain respond to certain stimuli. And that's our goal, to get you through this. So I just want to kind of leave you today with the idea of this is how our brain works. And when you get hijacked, when you have a trigger and your frontal cortex goes offline, just like a dimmer switch, and that tug of war and that amygdala wins, what can I do about it? And so I want you to come back next week. We're going to start talking about the responses that you have. And then the following week, what can I do about it? Again, our goal is to make sure that this education piece gives you that bridge between I understand what's going on, now what? I really want to hit that now what. So I also want to remind you that everything you're learning here is psychoeducational. Please do not take anything you learn here and replace that with your primary care or your primary care provider's advice, whether that be a behavioral health specialist or your medical doctor. We want to make sure that you are utilizing this information as an adjunct to any treatment you might be involved in. So thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to see you next week. We are going to be talking about your fight, flight, freeze, fawn response in a lot more detail and what you can do with those responses when they show up. So thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to throw the show a couple of bucks, you're welcome to do that at the Venmo link. Here that is on your screen. If you want to go ahead and take use that camera thing with that link. Or if you would like, the link will be in the show notes on the podcast and then here on our YouTube channel. We use that money to pay our production team a livable wage so that we can bring you great content. Again, if you have any questions or you'd like to learn more, you can visit us at our website, daisygirlcommunications.com. Or you can email me directly at daisygirlcommunications@gmail.com. And as always, we want to end, if you're in crisis, please reach out. You can do that by calling or texting 988. I've done it before. I've utilized this when I was in a crisis. They helped me calm down that amygdala response and return to my frontal cortex so that I could make the choice to keep myself alive. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.